The book of Exodus is the second book in the Hebrew Bible, known to Christians as the Old Testament. It is a foundational text that has shaped the beliefs and traditions of millions of people over millennia. The narratives contained within its chapters are not just stories. They are the bedrock of faith for Jews and Christians alike, offering lessons that transcend time and culture. It tells a powerful story of slavery and freedom, despair and hope, punishment and forgiveness. The Israelites, subjected to brutal slavery in Egypt, cry out for deliverance. Their suffering is palpable, their hope almost extinguished, yet in the midst of their darkest hour, a glimmer of hope appears. This hope is embodied in the figure of Moses, a man chosen by God to lead his people out of bondage. It's a story about the Israelites' journey from oppression in Egypt to liberation under the guidance of God. Moses, once a prince of Egypt, becomes the reluctant leader of a nation yearning for freedom. His journey is fraught with challenges, from confronting Pharaoh to guiding a rebellious people through the wilderness. Each step of the way, Moses relies on his faith in God's promises. This journey, known as the Exodus, is a cornerstone of Jewish faith and has resonated with people across cultures and centuries. It is commemorated annually during Passover, a festival that celebrates the Israelites' deliverance from Egypt. The rituals and traditions of Passover serve as a reminder of the enduring power of faith and the importance of remembering one's history. Exodus is not simply a historical account, it's a timeless narrative of divine intervention and human resilience. The plagues that befall Egypt, the parting of the Red Sea, and the provision of manna in the desert are all manifestations of God's power and care for his people. These miraculous events are not just ancient history, they are symbols of hope and assurance for believers today. The book explores themes of faith, obedience, and the nature of covenant. The covenant at Mount Sinai, where God gives the Ten Commandments, is a pivotal moment in the narrative. It establishes a unique relationship between God and the Israelites, one based on mutual commitment and responsibility. This covenant is not just a set of rules, it is a guide for living a life that honors God and respects others. It shows us the devastating consequences of slavery and the transformative power of freedom. The Israelites' liberation from Egypt is not just a physical journey, it is a spiritual awakening. It teaches us that true freedom involves more than just escaping oppression. It requires a transformation of the heart and mind. The joy and relief of the Israelites as they break free from their chains is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for renewal. At the heart of the Exodus story is the relationship between God and his chosen people, the Israelites. This relationship is characterized by moments of profound intimacy and trust, as well as times of doubt and rebellion. The burning bush, where God first speaks to Moses, and the giving of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai are key moments that highlight this dynamic relationship. These events underscore the idea that God is not distant or detached, he is actively involved in the lives of his people. This relationship is complex and often tested, marked by both incredible miracles and moments of human weakness. The parting of the Red Sea is one of the most dramatic miracles in the Bible, a powerful demonstration of God's ability to save his people against all odds. Yet, the Israelites often falter in their faith, questioning God's plan and longing for the familiarity of Egypt. These moments of weakness are met with both divine patience and discipline, illustrating the challenges of maintaining faith in the face of adversity. The book of Exodus reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope can emerge. The Israelites' journey through the wilderness is a metaphor for the human experience, filled with trials and tribulations, but also moments of divine grace and guidance. The light breaking through the clouds symbolizes the hope and renewal that come from trusting in God's promises. It is a powerful reminder that no matter how bleak our circumstances may seem, there is always a path to redemption and renewal. It teaches us that freedom is not free. It comes at a cost and requires constant vigilance. The Israelites face numerous challenges on their journey to the Promised Land, from external threats to internal strife. Their story is a testament to the idea that freedom must be actively maintained and defended. It is a call to remain vigilant in the pursuit of justice, and to work together to overcome obstacles. Most importantly, it reveals a God who is deeply invested in the fate of humanity, a God who hears the cries of the oppressed and acts to deliver them. The pillar of fire that guides the Israelites by night and the cloud by day are symbols of God's constant presence and protection. Moses' prayers and the comforting gestures among the people highlight the importance of community and faith in overcoming adversity. The book of Exodus is a timeless reminder of the power of faith, the importance of freedom, and the enduring presence of a compassionate and just God, as it is written in Exodus 3:7-8. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." And in Exodus 20:1-2, "And God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." Finally, in Exodus 14:13-14, Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid, stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, you need only to be still." These verses encapsulate the essence of the Exodus story, reminding us of God's unwavering commitment to his people, and the promise of a brighter future. They serve as a beacon of hope and a testament to the enduring power of faith. The story of Exodus begins with the Israelites living in Egypt. They had settled there during a time of great famine, seeking refuge and sustenance. Initially they were welcomed with open arms by the Pharaoh of that time, who recognized the contributions of Joseph, a prominent Israelite who had risen to a position of power in Egypt. Joseph's wisdom and leadership had saved Egypt from the worst of the famine, and in gratitude the Pharaoh allowed Joseph's family and his people to settle in the fertile land of Goshen. They had initially come to Egypt during a time of famine, welcomed by the Pharaoh. The Israelites prospered in their new home, their numbers growing steadily over the generations. They lived in peace and contributed to the prosperity of the Egyptian kingdom. However, as time passed, the memory of Joseph and his contributions faded from the collective memory of the Egyptian rulers. However, over generations their status changed. A new Pharaoh came to power, one who did not know or honor the legacy of Joseph. This new ruler viewed the Israelites with suspicion and fear. He saw their growing population as a potential threat to his authority and the stability of his kingdom. The Israelites, once honored guests, were now seen as outsiders and potential enemies. A new Pharaoh who did not know or honor the legacy of Joseph rose to power. This Pharaoh was determined to suppress the Israelites and prevent them from becoming too powerful. He implemented harsh measures to control their population and limit their influence. The Israelites were subjected to brutal slavery, forced to work under grueling conditions. This Pharaoh saw the growing Israelite population as a threat. He feared that if they continued to multiply, they might join forces with Egypt's enemies in times of war, or even rise up in rebellion against him. To prevent this, he devised a plan to break their spirit and reduce their numbers. He feared their numbers and potential for rebellion. The Pharaoh ordered the Israelites to be put to hard labor, building his cities and working in the fields. The work was backbreaking and relentless, designed to crush their will and keep them in a state of perpetual subjugation. The Israelites endured unimaginable hardships, their lives filled with suffering and despair. To control them, he subjected them to brutal slavery. The Israelites were forced to build cities and work the fields for the Pharaoh, enduring backbreaking labor and cruel treatment. Their cries for relief went unheard, and their suffering seemed endless. Yet, even in the midst of their oppression, they held on to their faith and their hope for deliverance. The Israelites were forced to build cities and work the fields for the Pharaoh, enduring backbreaking labor and cruel treatment. Despite the harsh conditions, they continued to multiply, their resilience and determination unbroken. The Pharaoh's attempts to crush their spirit only strengthened their resolve to survive and maintain their identity as a people. It was during this time of suffering that Moses, the future liberator of the Israelites, was born. His birth was a beacon of hope in a time of darkness. His mother, fearing for his life, took a desperate step to save him from the Pharaoh's decree to kill all newborn Hebrew boys. She placed him in a basket and set him adrift on the Nile River, praying that he would be spared. To save him from an order to kill all newborn Hebrew boys, his mother placed him in a basket and set him adrift in the Nile River. The river, a symbol of life and sustenance in Egypt, became the unlikely protector of the infant Moses. His journey down the Nile was fraught with danger, but it was also guided by a higher power. He was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, who raised him as her own in the Egyptian royal court. This unexpected turn of events placed Moses in a unique position. He grew up with the privileges of royalty, yet he was always aware of his true heritage. His dual identity would shape his destiny and the future of his people. Moses' upbringing exposed him to two worlds, the luxury of the Egyptian court and the silent suffering of his own people. He witnessed the opulence and power of the Pharaoh's palace, but he also saw the harsh realities of the Israelites' lives. This dual perspective gave him a unique understanding of both the oppressors and the oppressed. This dual identity would play a crucial role in his destiny. As he grew older, Moses became increasingly aware of the injustices faced by his people. His heart was torn between his loyalty to the Pharaoh who had raised him and his compassion for the Israelites who suffered under the Pharaoh's rule. This internal conflict would eventually lead him to make a choice that would change the course of history. Despite his privileged upbringing, Moses never forgot his Hebrew roots. One day, while tending sheep in the wilderness, he had a life-altering encounter with God. He saw a bush engulfed in flames, yet it was not consumed. From the burning bush, God spoke to Moses. He revealed his name, Yahweh, and declared his plan to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. God chose Moses to be his instrument, to confront Pharaoh and demand the release of his people. This encounter was a turning point in Moses' life. It transformed him from a shepherd into a prophet, a reluctant leader chosen by God for a perilous mission. Initially hesitant and filled with self-doubt, Moses eventually accepted his divine calling. The burning bush became a powerful symbol of God's presence and his commitment to the liberation of the oppressed. It was a call to action, a reminder that God can use even the most ordinary individuals to accomplish extraordinary things. Section 4. Let my people go, the plagues of Egypt. Moses, following God's command, returned to Egypt and confronted Pharaoh. He demanded the release of the Israelites, saying, "Let my people go so that they may worship me in the wilderness." Pharaoh, however, refused to listen. He hardened his heart and intensified the Israelites' suffering. In response to Pharaoh's defiance, God unleashed a series of 10 plagues upon Egypt. Each plague was a demonstration of God's power over the Egyptian gods and a judgment against Pharaoh's stubborn refusal to free the Israelites. The plagues were dramatic and devastating. They included turning the Nile River into blood, swarms of frogs and locusts, a plague of boils, and a hailstorm that destroyed crops. Through it all, Pharaoh remained obstinate, refusing to acknowledge Yahweh's power or grant the Israelites their freedom. The plagues serve as a powerful reminder of the consequences of oppression and the importance of heeding the call for justice. They demonstrate God's willingness to intervene in human affairs to protect the vulnerable and punish the wicked. Section 5. A Night of Remembrance, the Passover Feast. The Passover Feast is one of the most significant and deeply rooted traditions in Jewish culture. It is a time when families come together to remember and celebrate their ancestors' liberation from slavery in ancient Egypt. This annual event is filled with rituals, prayers, and symbolic foods that tell the story of the Exodus. The 10th and final plague was the most devastating of all. This plague was not just a random act of destruction, it was a calculated and divine intervention meant to break the will of Pharaoh and the Egyptian people. The land of Egypt was already reeling from the previous 9 plagues, which had brought about immense suffering and chaos. But this final plague was different. It was the ultimate test of faith and obedience. God, through Moses, warned Pharaoh that he would send a plague that would kill all the firstborn sons in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh himself to the firstborn of the lowliest slave. This was a direct challenge to Pharaoh's authority and a demonstration of God's power. Despite the warnings, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he refused to let the Israelites go. This set the stage for a dramatic and heart-wrenching event that would change the course of history. However, God provided a way for the Israelites to escape this plague. He gave them specific instructions to follow, which would serve as a sign of their faith and obedience. These instructions were not just about physical actions, they were deeply symbolic and carried profound spiritual significance. The Israelites were to prepare themselves both physically and spiritually for the deliverance that was about to come. He instructed them to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doorpost with its blood. This act was not merely a ritual, it was a powerful symbol of protection and faith. The lamb's blood served as a sign that the household was under God's protection. It was a mark of distinction that set the Israelites apart from the Egyptians and signified their trust in God's promise of deliverance. This sign would identify their homes and protect their firstborn sons from the angel of death. The angel of death was a divine messenger sent to execute God's judgment on the Egyptians. As it passed through the land, it would spare the homes marked with the blood of the Lamb. This act of marking the doorposts was a profound expression of faith and obedience, and it ensured the safety of the Israelite families. This event, known as Passover, is a pivotal moment in the Exodus story. It is a time of remembrance and celebration, a time to honor the faith and courage of the ancestors who trusted in God's promise. Passover is not just a historical event, it is a living tradition that continues to inspire and unite Jewish communities around the world. The rituals and symbols of Passover serve as a powerful reminder of God's deliverance and the enduring strength of faith. It marks the transition from slavery to freedom, from death to life. The story of Passover is a story of transformation and redemption. It is a testament to the power of faith and the resilience of the human spirit. The journey from slavery to freedom is not just a physical journey, it is a spiritual and emotional journey that continues to resonate with people of all faiths and backgrounds. The Israelites followed God's instructions, and that night, as the angel of death passed over their homes, they were spared. This miraculous event was a turning point in their journey to freedom. It was a moment of divine intervention that reaffirmed their faith and strengthened their resolve. The safety of their firstborn sons was a powerful sign of God's protection and favor. Passover became a central ritual in Judaism, a time to remember God's deliverance and celebrate their freedom. The traditions and rituals of Passover have been passed down through generations, preserving the memory of the Exodus and the lessons of faith and obedience. The Seder meal, with its symbolic foods and prayers, serves as a living link to the past and a source of inspiration for the future. The Passover meal, Seder, is still observed by Jews all over the world as a way to retell the story of the Exodus and connect with their heritage. It is a time of reflection, gratitude, and celebration. The Seder is more than just a meal. It is a spiritual journey that brings families and communities together in a shared experience of faith and tradition. Through the rituals and stories of Passover, Jews around the world continue to honor their ancestors and celebrate the enduring power of faith and freedom.